And welcome back to the program. Now it's time for People in Politics, and today we want to talk about something completely different, away from the normal politics that we usually talk about. But now let's talk about media and politics. It's that season once again that, politicians will be crisscrossing the country, campaigning for various seats. And us, as the media here, we also have a key role to play in terms of just shaping the whole political landscape and how it will pan out come 2022 and even beyond. And with me in studio, I have got able gentlemen to help me discuss this. I start with our very own, John Jacob Kioria. John, you're saying that today you're feeling like ish-ish, you're on the receiving end. You're used to asking questions, so today is your turn.
Yeah, today is my turn. I think it's my first time to be at this end.
Right.
Somebody else is asking questions and I have to respond to them.
Una sweat hivi? Sweat kidogo?
Nah, never.
Good one. Good. Okay, that is Job Jacob Kioria here, just helping us to dissect some of these issues. And of course, we also have Alfred Kidaha Usagi, if I got it right,
yes,
who is a lecturer of journalism and communication at the Multimedia University. Karibu sana to the show.
Asante.
As well as the veteran himself, Ken Bosire, who is a consulting and a training editor with years of experience in the print journalism. So let's just have a discussion. Karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start with you, Jacob. As a journalist, are you ready for 2022 election?
Absolutely. I am ready to the extent that the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, my employer, has empowered me to that extent. But equally, probably the question should be whether journalists are ready in entirety. And I think that's why we're seeing some form of training being advanced by the Media Council of Kenya. Yeah. And I think it also behooves the media houses in the Republic of Kenya to start training their journalists towards the year 2022. So individually, I could be ready, but then is everybody who is involved in this whole craft of covering politics ready? And I think that's a big question that we ought to answer, as it were.
Okay, and the reason why I ask you that question is that you find that most journalists are caught flat-footed in terms of preparation on how to get into that particular area of politics, because covering an election is no mean feat. Yes. Absolutely, covering an election is not something that just happens with a flash. I covered the 2017 general election, and you could see the fatigue with which we worked with, because most of the times you're required to report on very complex issues, and sometimes again to balance between the candidates is quite an interesting one. 2022 will be a bit different if you compare to the 2017 general election. In the 2017 general election, we had a president who was seeking another term in office. In 2022, most likely we're going to have fresh candidates now seeking a mandate from Kenyans, people who've never occupied that position. And it will be an interesting one to see how this works out, the influence of the government in the next general election. And therefore, the issues to balance in the next election are quite complex. And most importantly, they need to be covered with, being very careful. And you need your ante up in covering the next election. Okay, let me just come to you, Ken Bosire. He's raised a very important point that 2017 and 2022 are completely different. From your own experience, how does it play out in terms of 2017? You were in the newsroom doing that job and working back to back, meeting the deadlines, and now we are in 2022. What's quite different comparing the two general election cycles?
Thanks, Victor. And I think Jacob has raised a very fundamental thing about being in the newsroom and as a journalist. But first of all, I think it's important that as we look at that, there are certain dynamics that have happened in the newsrooms that we need to be alive to. That when we came into the COVID stage, period, the newsrooms have evolved in a big way. There has been what we call loss of very experienced manpower that was critical in the planning of that election. Part of it has been because of the retrenchments and redundancies. There have also been this disruption, economic disruptions that have not allowed the media to have what we used to call preparation that was sufficient? Do the media houses have the finances to do the resourcing, for example? And that's why entities like the Media Council are coming in. But in-house preparations that need to be done are still an issue. So that in terms of personnel, in terms of psychological preparedness, in terms of the issues that we are putting across, and most importantly, the election of 2017 was more of continuity, somebody trying to defend a position. But 2022 will be what we call a transition election, with new players, and new information. But the main actors are still the ones who are involved. They've been with us for the last 30 years. The same personalities. They will have to retweak. But the thing is that the person who is defending it will live in. And interestingly, Jacob just mentioned something about the involvement of the state in that 2017 thing to defend their own man. But that is also being seen that is coming into play. That the incumbent, for the first time, he's completely actively involved in his succession.
Completely actively involved in his succession.
Yes.
I don't know what you think about that, Alfred. Your take. Are we there yet? Are we ready for 2022 as a media house, as a media fraternity and a media industry?
Good morning, viewers. I would say yes and no. Yes, if we were to go back to how the media covered the elections of 2017 and borrowing from the practice of 2013, where in 2013 the media went almost full throttle in pouring out information to the people and being open in the coverage of elections. But then the media came under attack, a heavy attack from the public for that. And then they slowed down in 2017. So I think borrowing from the extremes of 2013 and the caution that they took in 2017, that the media, I would say, have two lessons to learn from and perfect on the same going forward. So in that regard, somehow the media should be prepared by now. But the no would be because of the changing dynamics which arise from sometimes the building of coalitions in the country. And we cannot pretend or bury our head in the sand in the country that political players in the country have no role to play in the media.
Of course they do.
Of course they do. So looking at that, then you can tell the changing dynamics, especially with coalitions, it will have an impact on how media operates. And then when you check on ownership, then ownership would have an impact on reporting. So in that regard, you can't really tell how prepared the media are.
Okay, Jacob, have we made strides as an industry?
We have made serious strides in terms of, our coverage. If you look back and probably look at some of the elections that have happened in the Republic of Kenya, you would see major strides in terms of what the Kenyan media is doing or has done to enhance coverage. And I think the only bit that is remaining, and I think with the elections law, it's something we can harness in the coming election, is that the media has been unable to run parallel tallying of votes. And I think that is something probably that we need to do in conjunction with the IEBC. And now that the election law says that the results declared at the polling center are final, and that is what will be transmitted to the National Tallying Center. And the fact that those results should be displayed clearly on the door of a polling center. I think it is very possible, once we deploy our reporters and our resources to these polling centers across constituencies, it is almost critical that in the next election, the media must have a tallying of their own. It could be dangerous, but that is what I'm saying, in conjunction with the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, but where we retain our editorial independence. It is very likely and it is important, and that can be done in conjunction with all the media houses. They can actually agree. We will send our representative to this tallying center where media has their tallying center, our representative from this station, this, the other, so that before IEBC even declares its results, because I think that's how you're able to deliver a credible election. And media is a critical partner in delivering a credible election. And we have had our past, you know what happened into the year 2007.
Exactly.
And media stands in the dock because of the same.
Yeah.
So what do we do then to ensure that we also play our part in ensuring a credible election? If you ask me, I will tell you, media houses need to have a tallying center in the next election.
Yes, Alfred.
Yeah, Jacob mentioned something about the display of results at polling stations, and I went back to the 2002 elections, and I keep on asking, especially when I compare those elections and the elections of 2013, what happened in 2002 that citizens could sit somewhere at a corner, any corner in the country, and do their own arithmetics regarding the
actually you
figures that are coming
see
in.
people with pen and papers
exactly
literally doing the tabulation.
Yes,
right.
because at that time, I don't know whether it was the law that allowed media to report the results as pinned on a wall somewhere or on the door of the polling station, and those results were transmitted by, especially radio. Radio played a big role in 2002, that citizens could sit and do the tabulation on their own. Then come 2013 and 2017, it looked like someone had made it illegal, that the media were not relaying those results anymore, and that's the difference. Perhaps we need to go back to 2002.
Exactly. And when I talk about that, Ken, you remember the days where election would be conducted, people would go and vote, and then one by one, all the way from Suba, the results would be driven to KICC for declaration.
Yeah, that was, and even before that, before they were driven, that time what we call the government played a big role in terms of, because everything had to be aggregated at the DCs.
Yeah.
The DC was the returning officer. That was a very different scenario. That he would decide to change the results, and what he declares is the result that the government of the day wanted.
Yeah.
But now that changed. Now that you're bringing back to our own transition ourselves.
Yes.
In 2002, the media played a very open role. We were actually part of the process of that change, because you remember we are part, and when the media actually drove what we call democratization space, we entered the space, we partnered with the civil society, so that by the time we came to 2002, everybody was prepared for that change. We knew the direction where things will go. And then the transition was from KANU, very, very strong party, and we are coming into a new space where media was very free. And then after that, 2007 was a jolt for us as the media.
Yeah.
We got sucked into the violence, into the matrix of that population. We were so scared, we were on trial. So 2013, we were almost scared. We went to the extreme end. We transitioned from being there and practiced some mongrel of something called peace journalism.
Yes.
And that peace journalism made us, don't touch, it might spark something else. 2017 was still trying to wake up from that so-called slumber of peace journalism. And we were either touching or not touching. 2022 will be a mixture of what we felt.
Full throttle.
Yes.
Expose it as it is.
Do we feel the way we felt in 2013?
Yeah.
So that we are too sensitive to some issues? Do we feel the way we did in 2017, or the 202 thing? So all those are things that we have to crystallize. But what is most important is that is IBC as the main player.
Yes.
Prepared to put in place the structures, because I think they need to put the centers for reporting, the tallying, so that media pick the result, and we have to find some kind of collaboration among the media ourselves, because the days of scoops are long gone.
Yeah.
It's just information we have to give to the public, and where do we get it? At the pool and credible, and then because we do not have the resources to be stretched by every media in all the polling, the tallying centers across the country.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, before you continue, allow me to break the rule. Jacob, take us on a break, then you come back.
Quite interesting, all right. We're taking a break. Good morning, Kenya. We'll be back in a while after a short while.
And welcome back. Jacob took you on a break, and I'm welcoming you back. We are that good. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Continue the conversation, media and politics ahead of 2022. So, gentlemen, let's talk about media and democracy. We have been vilified. In 2007, we were taken to the cross. We were crucified. We were called all manner of names. But again, we can easily say that in 2007, media played a key role in whatever happened in the country. We can even extend it to, beyond our borders. In Rwanda, it was majorly media. So what is the role of media in enhancing democracy? Starting with you, Alfred.
With that question, I like citing one of my favorite authors in that subject, an author of a book, actually the two authors of a book called Eyes on Democracy.
Yes.
One of them happens to be a former State House spokesman, Mr. Manoa Esipisu, and his colleague Isaac Haguli. They wrote a book, that book, the title of given, Eyes on Democracy. And in it, they've captured two very important roles of the media.
Yeah.
And the first one is informing citizenry. And then information of citizenry, they've highlighted about four things. One of them would be between the elections and away from the elections, or during elections and away from elections, the media ought to play a watchdog role. There's something that I like, some word that I've coined in reference to Kenyan media, and that would be that they're normally lambs for slaughter during elections. In other words, many of them go to bed with the political players.
Wow.
Yeah, then they are tigers away from elections.
Ken will tell us that, because he's in that position, so I know it's tempting. It's a hot seat.
True. They are tigers. They're tigers away from elections, especially when you watch these investigative reports. They normally give unearthing trash, or what an American president called muckraking, especially with the role of magazines. And now, what happens during elections? They tend to slow down, and that becomes almost like lapdogs in the laps of the politicians.
Yeah.
But on top of what they've what I've mentioned regarding information, they also play the role of expression of, or allowing for expression of freedom or of opinion, expression of opinion by the citizens. And therefore, for example, the man on the street is given a microphone to air his opinions about the government of the day. And also during elections, citizens are allowed to express themselves. But looking at media wholesomely, and not just the television and the radio stations that we have, or newspapers, the social media has allowed the citizen to play a very big role. So a combination of that, the legacy media and the new media, they will see the role that the media has played over the years. So they go on to talk of enhancing freedom, things to do with reporting of elections. The media also unearths what happens during the electoral process, the in-between of elections until the announcement of the results, even giving a platform to politicians and political players to campaign or just share their ideas.
I don't know what's your take on that, Ken. He said that during elections we are always lambs for slaughter.
Yes, that's one of the issues that the heat is turned on you. Because everybody appreciates the role that the media plays. Because we are the ones, because of the trust element that we have as the media, the public will look up to us to give them information. And are we ready? The pressure within you to give that public information in terms of capacity, in terms of what, but media plays a critical role. But then one of the things that makes it very difficult, now I'll talk from experiences, as the media, you cannot preach better democracy and outer things. Are you democratic enough within your space?
Yes.
Because that is the challenge that we have. How do we hire? Do we allow free expression? How are we unshackled from what we call our entrepreneurial interests, our business interests? Because all these things are an interplay of issues that emerge during elections. The business interests, the commercial commercial interests, ownership interests. Who do we bring? Do we bring the right people to do the right thing? So once we sort that space within ourselves, then you allow a journalist to express themselves. But if the journalist is walking from Kayole up to the newsroom, that person is never likely to focus on issues
and to deliver.
The other thing that I find very interesting about our level of democracies, are we informed? How are we informed? Because in the past, I think, if I go a little bit back, I was reading a book, memoirs of Father Gabriel Dolan. is called Undaunted, Stories of Freedom in Shackled Communities. He talks about how the media goes and brings out these stories. We have to be more conversational. We have to feel the pulse of those people. How? Because we are going away from what we call lecture media, telling the public. We have to involve them in the space of discourses. And this is the challenge that we have because of resourcing and availability of space and timing, that we have to bring the citizen to talk about what they need, as opposed to us telling them what they need.
Right.
It has to be more conversational.
It has to be more conversational. Jacob, anytime you go out there in the field, you have your microphone and the camera tapes, the camera is rolling and running. You have that one thing to inform and just to be independent and report what's there. Is there democracy in your head as a journalist?
Well, quite an interesting question. Democracy in my head.
Yes.
Well, yes. And I think that is, to understand journalism and its practice, first of all, you must think about the tenets of journalism. What are they? It's fairness, it's balance, it's objectivity, it's accuracy, it's timeliness. Those are the things that are the basic tenets of practicing journalism. But there's something Ken says that is quite interesting, and that is something that you would say then the media has failed in terms of enhancing democracy. Have we talked about commercial interests in newsrooms and in media houses?
Yeah.
Have we been able to talk about not just about commercial interests? There are still other interests that are well entrenched into newsrooms or media houses that compromise how we deliver this message. It could be, I have democracy in my head.
Yeah.
Is my senior democratic in his head? That's the other question to ask. But most importantly, as we talk about those things, Victor, and I think for me, we need to move this conversation forward. And I don't know whether Kenya is ripe for this kind of democracy, because sometimes, and I'm sorry to say, media hides behind this veil of objectivity. Yet when we look at the ownership, it's quite a big problem. Is it time now that media is allowed declare your candidate so that we end this debate? All right. If you go to the US, Fox News is completely Republican. CNN, New York Times declared, I think in the last election, who they were supporting publicly. I'm saying so that we end this debate of what is happening in newsrooms, but Jacob, commercial interests are always compromising.
Yeah, that brings the whole aspect of media bias. And perhaps Mwalimu can tell us here, in the classroom, is it the same thing, that the linkage between what's happening in the classroom and wanasema kwa ground vitu ni different?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we in class we introduce our students to various areas that would inform how they cover news or how they just report on democracy. We look at the canons of journalism that Jacob has mentioned, the truthfulness and accuracy and all that. Then we also introduce them to the code of conduct, the code of practice of conduct. Then we also talk about the objectivity that also that he has alluded to. But at the end of it, we give a caution when we are talking about objectivity by looking at what Andrew Boyd says, the myth of objectivity. That sometimes in real practice it becomes just a myth. You cannot live fully, because there are four theories that will inform how journalists would operate in the field, the real politic world. But I'll just pick on one that touches on how editors and reporters behave, and that is called the elite values model. The elite values model would inform us that, as a journalist, what you asked Jacob, do you have democracy in your head? Not all journalists have democracy in their head.
Yes.
They bring their own values. Some of them have a constant frown on democracy. They would wish things to be the way they were. Some of them, perhaps having studied widely or observed widely, the way he has referred to CNN and how they covered elections, some of them would want to bring that on the table as well. Yeah, so there's almost a disconnect, but we appreciate it in academia as well.
Yes.
That objectivity, yes, is very important, but sometimes where you went to school, how you are brought up, what you read out there is likely to inform how you report on the same democracy.
Let me ask Ken this question. With all those years of experience at the print, but then there's that particular point where you want to craft a headline, but you're still scratching your head and, okay, this story is going to tilt this direction. This story, if I put it this direction, is going to bring a lot of heat. At what point do we as journalists or as a media fraternity decide and say, it's going to be this way, not that way? At that point, you make that hard decision.
I think one of the things you do as an editor, there are certain salient issues that you need to look at.
Yeah.
Are the facts right?
Are the facts right?
Those facts, you cannot turn them on their head. The facts are right, you've verified, you've checked everything, those have to be told. And that's where you talk about your independence, your leanings. And you have to rise above, because you have to rise above. It's very difficult sometimes, but you have to rise above, because there is the buck stops with you. And how do you rise above? How is your personal integrity? That is very important.
Yeah.
What do you believe in? 2, do you have the depth of knowledge? Because when you're in this thing, do you have the passion to do what you need to do? And because beyond the training or the basic training, there is also your person as an individual.
Exactly.
Because if you do not believe in anything, you can be swayed in any way. And that balance can only come. But the most important thing is that we have to stick our mind. The guiding thing on the road is facts. And do I have the facts? Do I verify? And am I fair? Am I accurate? All those things have to come into play. And your decision is very important, because it has to come to that editor who says, this is going to be my headline.
Yes.
And this is where these debates of media capture come in. Are we labeled as being influenced by certain forces beyond the newsrooms? And this is, for me, this is where the debate is. The training, we are all trained.
Yes.
We do the basic things.
But let me ask you, have you been captured right now, ahead of 2022? Do you see the sense of media capture already at play?
There is a very serious perception out there that the media in itself, as it is in Kenya, is beginning to, there's a feeling that if you look at the main headlines every day, you can almost see not a very shadowy hand driving certain facts to a certain way. Part of it, I don't blame the media themselves, the journalists themselves. Some of them do not have the knowledge. Do they have the research? Do we define the facts as they are? For example, when we talk about a term like going to the mountain, what does the mountain mean? Is it a geographical name? What is the political connotation of going to, you say, yesterday I said, will Raila climb the mountain?
Yes.
What is that, does it mean? Do we contextualize that information? Are we able to have a glossary and say, this is what we understand by doing this? So that we are breaking that information to the public. We're not just throwing terminologies.
Yes.
So if you understand these things, but right now, as it is, the perception is, let's agree, that there is a sense that everybody feels that we are shackled. We are not kicking our feet as we should do. And this is not very good, because, and that brings me to what Jacob said.
Yes.
Can we declare our candidates? We cannot. It's very difficult. It's a very dicey, it's a very tricky situation for us. Because, first of all, who owns the media? This media, the truth is, it's in the hands of the politicians, the people who move the debate, they finance. So how will their voice and their fingerprints be felt in this media? Because people will already say, if this is allied to so and so, some media has to be, we have to rise above and get to the point where we say the ownership question has to be addressed before we begin to declare. Because there are many other Kenyans who don't have access to that media. The way the resource has been distributed is already very skewed. So the ones who have the means to own it will declare the way they want it. How about the people who do not have access to that media?
Absolutely. And Jacob, the debate here is, we've been captured. So how do we get from that shackle of state capture and media ownership? This one is in bed with that particular wing of the government and what have you. From the journalist perspective, who is actively practicing the craft, where do we start to just free ourselves and be independent in our reporting ahead of 2022? Because it's going to be a tough one. Right now, it's just time to slowly roll into the ultimate end.
Victor, I think we must be very intentional about unshackling ourselves from the perceived alliances or capture, for that matter. It must be very intentional. And it must begin from, self-evaluation. Like Ken was saying, as a journalist, are you fair? Are you objective? Are you balancing your story? And I mean, it starts from self-evaluation. So that also, even, and I want to be very intentional again, even the owners of these media houses, like Ken says, must also be very intentional, because how do we grow this democracy then? Because we must think about country first. We must think about this craft first. We must be very intentional then about unshackling ourselves from this. And there's something Linus Kaikai said about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking to political parties and party leaders. Get your agents out of newsrooms. And that needs to happen. Get your agents out of newsrooms. Let them go and do your political lobbying and whatever it is. Let us have honest journalism in newsrooms.
Yeah.
Let us have people who can, think about country
Do you
first.
feel the hands of those agents?
Sometimes you will feel them, and it will shock you even how high it goes. It will shock you how high it goes. But like I'm saying, it must be very intentional. It must start from self-evaluation. And once we're done with self-evaluation, then even the stakeholders, the Media Council of Kenya, the Media Owners Association, they must also be very intentional about ensuring that these values are upheld in newsrooms, and that, fairness is delivered to everybody. Like you say, like Ken says, the next election, Kenyans are really, and if you look at the trust, the trust level of Kenyans on media is quite high.
Exactly. It
is very high. Then if the public is trusting us to do this job for them, to deliver news that are fair, accurate, and balanced, then that is what we ought to do. And I don't think that is even a question that we should, that should be mind-boggling, that we should spend 3 hours talking about it. It's about self-evaluation and holding self-true to those principles of journalism.
Exactly. What do you make of that, Mwalimu?
Yeah, I would ask a question, just a rhetorical one. What happened to that statement, famous phrase in journalism, publish and be damned? And then you would pose the same to journalists. Why don't you dare publish some of the things that you think would help in informing the citizens in making the right choice? Publish and be damned. So that's the way that maybe our journalists need to go. Our editors need to sacrifice, make some sacrifices, and who knows, if you lose on one end, you might gain on the other. And the laws that I'm talking about would be in the past. We need to cross the borders and go abroad. In the past, we've had journalists in this country who lost their jobs on account of publishing and being damned, and for sure they've been damned by their employers. But they've been elevated elsewhere. So where you're working at the moment, that's just an appeal to journalists. Where you're working at the moment is not the end in itself, but you can, for the common good, sacrifice your own comfort at the moment and be able to inform the citizens.
All right. I see.
I just wanted to mention something that is very interesting, that what Jacob has mentioned about being intentional. We have also to be very truthful to ourselves. That we have not acquainted ourselves. We've not. Some of us are coming into this with not very clean hands. We have been caught in the labeling on the side of what we call brown envelope journalism.
Yes.
It's a cliched thing, but that is a reality we have to deal with. The journalists, there are some of us. In the season of politics, it was a season of harvest.
That is the time now to reap big.
Went into what we call, this is the time for prosperity journalism. This time I'll own a car because the money is available. The political parties set aside special kitties for media. Who is this media that they said this kit is for? It is among us ourselves.
Yes.
And we have to call ourselves out and say, this is what we've done.
And this kind of mentality perhaps tilts the kind of objectivity and the way stories are supposed to be delivered. I mean, you've faced such kind of situations before, and from your point, how did it affect your work during that process? Because you know the fact, you verified from different sources, but when a reporter comes on the table with a different story, you see a complete story, different one.
Yeah, this what and they happen all the time. But what we needed to do as an editor, you have also to have what we call counter sources, and that's why I think for any newsroom that is now going to get prepared for the next election, they have to have what we call an election desk.
Yes.
That will have to process some of these things and see through. And for an editor, you have a right to call out a reporter or a journalist who has come and you think he's skewing the facts, he's coloring the facts. And some of the threads that came in were these things we say, let's embed journalists because they understand the issues around ODM, they understand the issues about you. So those guys, when they get embedded, which is good for news, quick news release and trust within those that you can get the inside sources. But at what point do you stop being embedded journalist to almost embedded journalist? You become part of the process. That you are the one going to help them. This is what we'll do. One of the experiences I'll just mention is that in 2007, I saw journalists coming into the newsrooms with campaign material. T-shirts, flyers,
and saying, Jacob has a cape somewhere mentioned, I don't know where.
That we from this side or we from this side.
Yes.
That was very dangerous. And we can already see but it has got down to that point that you cannot have a desk that you have to have a desk that synthesizes this material because there has to be consultation that I have this, and be bold about calling out guys that you think are not doing the right thing.
Exactly. Jacob, the way Ken is putting it, that it means that as a media industry, we have to be intentional moving forward, right?
It's absolutely intentional. But again, have you ever heard of this statement, call yourself to a meeting?
Yes.
Or call yourself to order?
Yes.
That's what we need to do. Let's call ourselves to order first. Because they're deep entrenched issues, again, that we have ignored over the years that have led to... Let me tell you, I went to an event the other day. Former CS Mwangi Kiunjuri, Martha Karua, and Moses Kuria had called a press conference.
Yes.
They were talking about Mount Kenya unity, the way political parties in Mount Kenya, will coalesce to talk about issues of Mount Kenya. Let me tell you the number of journalists that were there, the battery of journalists. I think they were more than the guests that were occupying Serena Hotel. But how many media houses were there that would legitimately deliver that story? I think
objectively.
I think there were about 7 media houses. So where did these other journalists or where did these other stories go? And let me tell you, we must first begin by addressing the issues of the welfare of journalists too. And Ken, points it out correctly. Let's pay journalists well. And I'm not saying that is the only problem, because either way, your values cannot be compromised because you're broke or whatever. But I'm saying let's first begin by appreciating journalists. Let's pay them properly, so that even when you come with a story that is accompanied by a brown envelope, the question is, why are you getting compromised? We are paying you, adequately. Why would it? Because I think that is also the other problem, because if one is tiptoeing to the end of the month or an empty pocket, how do you think that story will be compromised? So we must begin.
But I think
Media Council.
I think, Jacob, the issue of being intentional, even in our reporting, is that, are you in that industry with an intention of having to deliver? Because most people think that journalism is just a part-time job.
I think it also goes to, and I think it's proper, we have a lecturer in this conversation. It also goes to the kind of training that is ongoing, and also importantly, why are you joining this craft? I think to some people, journalism is an easy way to celebrity status.
Exactly.
To others is another way of ensuring you have the focal points for your face are through journalism. And that again, some of the media personalities that are being churned from this training colleges, their only stake to journalism is that they want quick fame through it, and then probably they will transit to something else. So it's a compounded problem that must be addressed. It must be a multifaceted approach towards sanitizing this industry.
Mwalimu, from your direction, does it really worry you? Because every time you nurture and release students out there to the world to go and work, what do you see in them? Where do you see them placed in 2-3 years down the road when you meet them in the industry? Do you feel so happy that you've churned out talent and people who are properly serving the nation?
I'll say yes, without any doubt. You expect the best, because in school we give them, or rather expose them to knowledge. We expose them to experiences, because we do not only have lecturers who are just academicians, but we also bring people from industry to come and interact with them. We also teach them the basic observation tools, which are sometimes natural, but we try and enhance. Then through research, or how to handle themselves in the society, exposing them to courses like sociology and media and politics, economics. There's nothing that is so new. And then with the practice, we sometimes get shocked that some of them have taken a turn that would be wrong. But at those who have stood and maybe lived by what the society expects and what the training expects from them, we have appreciated how they've turned out to be. But in most cases, with any training, with any field, you'll always have the good, the bad, and the ugly who will come out of the
good, the bad, and the ugly. That reminds me of in some situation where there was a procession all the way from JKIA, and journalists, we were exposed to that kind of torture all the way. You remember that day when Honorable Raila Odinga came from, was it in Germany or something? The kind of scaffold that started all the way from JKIA to Likoni Road to all the way to Mudurwa, straight to Upper Hill. It was like a whole day of drama with the police and all that. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the question that I would love to ask you, Ken, is that the issue of intentionality. We just have to be intentional to shape the kind of this space. We own it. But for us to be free, how do we get out of that kind of hole and just free ourselves and just fly away?
I think it is important that we have all agreed that one of the things that journalism is not just a job that you get trained. Is not a 5 o'clock, 8 to 5 o'clock job. It's a whole passion. It's a whole lifestyle.
Exactly.
It has to be that you're hooked. It cannot be you're off. And those who come into it with what Jacob has referred, seeking acclaim or celebrity status or looking for prosperity in it, will fall by the wayside. And those are the people, the bad eggs that give the bad eggs, that rotten eggs that give our industry a bad name. And one of the things that we need is there are already structures out here. We have to accept that our industry has been disrupted by what we call digitalization, the plurality of media. There are days we would say, like Jacob just mentioned, that there were 7 known, credible media. But how about the other array of media? Where did they go to? There are, for instance, media owners or media outfits where a journalist is never paid for months on end and is told, hold the mic, hold the pen, go get yourself paid. We have to begin to do an audit on those who owns media. If you own media, do you have the capacity to sustain journalists? Don't tell them to go out and pay themselves. They will go and seek bribes. Don't tell journalists that this is free for all. It's not just a medium. That integrity, that space has to be respected. And a lot of introspection has to, we have to do a lot of personal introspection. And I think for me, I think we need to get back, and this is part of the intentionality that Jacob is talking about, that we have to, because somewhere we've gone off tangent, and we have to begin to get these desks, and we have to get what we call mentorship roles. It's not too late.
Exactly.
We have to get mentors in the newsrooms, even if it's for a short period, to guide the other journalists that this is the way we did it. This is the way it should be done, with knowledge, without being completely attached the day-to-day running of the newsrooms. I think for us, 2022 will be very different, and we need to be intentional the way that those mentors, the experience, the institutional memory capacity that we've lost has to come back, because then there will be people who tell you, this is how we do it. Stories that I see, stories running without backgrounds, there's no context. Somebody just went and picked voices. How does this, for example, if somebody asks, who is Raila Odinga? How many journalists can do a whole discourse?
Just a simple question.
Who is Raila Odinga? Who is William Ruto? Who is Musalia Mudavadi? Having that repository of information about these characters will be able for you to interrogate what they say and what they are trying to tell the public, what they're trying to sell to the public. It is also important that we have to have a research team that will be able to put facts and context on these things. This is lacking in the newsrooms. Do we have that information? We don't. A lot of people are depending on Wikipedia. Copy-paste. And then, are we training our journalists on what we call multimedia skills?
Yes.
Because you're out in the field, can you do for both radio, print, and everything else? So this capacity building is critical, and it has to be intentional.
All right. Allow me to take a break right now. Jacob, I'm not going to give you that latitude to take us on a break now. It's now my turn. I'll take you on a break. When we come back, we just want to focus more on how the media, more so, with special focus to 2022, how we can be intentional in just shaping this democracy and enhancing cohesion in this particular country. Let's take a break, and we come back, we'll be going towards the tail end of this particular program. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're still having, it's fun, all right? Our work is just to talk, by the way. Somebody say that as journalists, kazi yetu ni kuongea tu na tunalipwa. But then the question is, somebody is talking about the issue of pay. This is a gentleman called George from Tigoni. George says that journalism is a side hustle for some of the industry players who have a huge followings. It's an income earner, and politicians have deep pockets. John, this goes back to what you're talking about, that you went for a function, and to your astonishment, you are the only legit, perhaps, reporter there.
Hey, well, quite an interesting one. But let me say the following. Journalism cannot be a side hustle.
Cannot be.
It is not a side hustle.
Do you know it's even in the Bible? The scribe.
Exactly. I mean, this is something we practice whether we are sleeping or we are awake. Journalism is a practice. It cannot be a side hustle. And let me tell you, part of the problem that we also see ni madharau kidogo na journalism, because kuna kamadharau wewe, because you are paid to talk. After all, the only thing you do is sit down and write. My friend, the amount of work that goes into, delivering a story only and letting it air is a lot of it. And we just don't work. We go using our brains throughout the entire time. So journalism cannot be a side hustle. These are the same things we are saying. This is not a place where is a shed for you to hide. If this is your side hustle, please go and concentrate on your main hustle. For some of us, it is not even a hustle. It is what we live on. It is what we are made of. That's just it.
And the issue of, you've talked about the issue of, being a side hustle, and it's a profession. Mwalimu is here, and for good luck, we have a student in studio who is his student. So it's a job. And as I said, journalism, actually, we have got the scribes in the Bible. Even Jesus himself was afraid of the scribes. Because alijua to these people, nikiongea hivi, they was going to report that way. But then let's talk about the issue of how the issue of media is going to shape the whole democracy moving forward to 2022. Perhaps some of the media houses are now gearing to align themselves to a particular wing and support a particular wing. So where do we draw the balance? Starting with you, Mwalimu Alfred.
Yeah, you talked about the Bible throwing a verse that would reinforce the idea of journalism being not a part-time job. The Bible tells us that no one puts a hand on a plow, having made a choice to go to the field to plow. No one looks back to confirm what is happening behind him. They always focus on that plow and how it is happening. Yeah. So anyone who has made a choice to join the world of journalism must put his hands on that plow and move forward with it without looking back, because you're not rehearsing in it. You are in it, and the whole nation depends on you. Some bad practices in journalism would ban a country. But then coming to your question, going forward, how would journalism impact on democracy? It began with the newspapers. James Bryce did a study in the US when he was an ambassador, UK ambassador in the US many years back, when newspaper was the main, or rather the dominant media, and he confirmed something called public opinion, and with it the theory of public opinion. Newspapers. Come magazine, President of America was not fascinated, or rather was not amused when magazines began to unearth the scandals that were reigning in the time, and he called them muckrakers. Come to broadcast media, it played a big role in the world wars and so forth. Come to the media as it is today. What we have, the media still has an impact. Television, and then a combination of that, legacy and new media. And so we do not see the end, or even the death of the newspaper. We do not see the death of television. They will still have an impact on our democracy through informing, still playing the traditional roles of informing, educating. They still be doing the social correlation role that the media plays in abundance. And then more so, this being seen in the world of citizen journalism, where it's no longer just you who are established in the media houses and us who are engaged in training, who are engaged in communication, but the citizens out there who have their phone, because the phone at one time was branded as the future of journalism, or the future media, but that future has come now. So the phone will continue to play a role, especially in the hands of the citizen journalists, and that calls for more training. Of course, we cannot gather all the citizens at Uhuru Park and train them on how to conduct their journalism, but the people we invite in the platforms we have, like the platform we have right now, we would be training the citizen who has a phone and would do a journalism that will add value to our democracy.
And talk of training, the Media Council of Kenya also launched a training for journalists ahead of 2022, and they'll be giving the guidelines on how to be balanced and just to report facts when you go out there, because 2022 is going to be that time of the year, and an election cycle that most people say that is going to be a tough one. So Media Council of Kenya is also doing an amazing job for us as journalists, so that we just know what's happening. Now we are also being trained, even at the work, during our work, we are also being trained. So coming to you, Ken, so where do we draw the balance? Because Mali politicians will come, of course, as one of the viewers said, that they have got deep pockets. So where do we draw the balance so that we can be that focused media and report what's on the ground?
First of all, I think it's important that you just mentioned about the side hustle. That bothers me. Media cannot be a side hustle. It is you're in it.
Yes.
For keeps. If you've decided that's where you're going to be, you're going to be in it. You are complete. Let me use the word. You are hooked.
You're hooked.
And for you to decide to be hooked, there has to be a passion. And that passion is what will carry you through. But it's also good to remember that media is an intense knowledge thing. If you are ignorant, you cannot be in the media. You must be intentional in the way you look for knowledge, facts, and put them on the ground. And then you must also understand, what is your person? Who are you? Who am I? Self-introspection, integrity. This is key, because that decision to accept that money to skew a story it has to come from your conscience. And this is important. It cannot come from just training. It must have a moral tag to it. What do I stand for? And then it is also, what is your responsibility? And then the tooling environment is important. Are you resourced? Are you resourced in the way you will verify? Do you have verification tools to detect what we call fake news? How sharp is your mind in terms of scrutiny? And are you in the end going to package your story? There are people today, politics, we do, a lot of people are doing what we call info entertainment. Can we package political news as info entertainment? We cannot. We have to begin to deliver different news, political news differently. It's not just entertaining. It's information, it's intense. And the packaging is going to be very different.
Yeah.
And the training, we have to train and keep training. And then in the end, we have to know, because of the changed sector environment, the dynamics in the industry remain very conversational.
Yeah.
We have to have our finger on the pulse. We have to know there is a citizen journalist. How do we tap into that conversation?
Yeah.
And once we tap it, how do we raise it so that it meets the standards of what we are looking for? And at the end of the day, we have to ring-fence our own integrity.
Exactly.
If we do not do that, then we are going to be. And finally, I just wanted to say this. I know times are tough. We are also part of this society that is now economically, socially very stressed. How do we manage the stress levels of individual journalists?
Yes.
Because we are caught up in this web. Many have lost jobs, many are stressed in their homes, they're having sicknesses. So the welfare of a journalist is critical in delivering a credible kind of information, a kind of ecosystem.
Okay. All right.
So that to the point that you cannot say, I'm going to set up a kiosk. I was in Kisumu and people told me that during the pandemic, people had to start a welfare, run small kiosks, tea kiosks, to support themselves. How do you expect this person, whose mind is divided between running a tea kiosk and trying to do information? That person is already very exposed. So, and on a higher level in the pecking order, we also have editors who have what we call media outfits. They do consultancies for these politicians and their political outfits, and they just remove a gown and come to the newsroom. They want to receive the news that they've consulted.
Exactly.
That conflict of interest must be addressed.
Exactly.
That is important. But we must go down to personal integrity, and we must have the courage to call each other through what we call peer review. And I think Editors Guild, the Media Council, and other media organizations have to rise to the occasion now to do the right thing.
All right, I think that I should treat that as your parting shot. Walimu, your parting shot, I'm told that you are stuck out of time. Please.
Okay, I will refer to what was discovered by editors many years ago. That is around 98 years ago, what are called the Canons of Journalism by ASNE, that is the American Society of News Editors, of truthfulness, accuracy, and freedom and all that. That this is a time for us to take a perspective on the canons of journalism.
Absolutely. Jacob, your parting shot. Are we speaking in the same language? The mainstream media houses, are we together, or kila mtu anavuta tu side yake?
No, we are not. And there's something Ken said, and I think that will be my parting shot. The days of scoops are long gone. It's time for media houses now to unite and have a common agenda in terms of the delivery of the next election. Sometimes we unite during presidential debates, but you will still see some interests trying to pop up when we're organizing these presidential debates. I think it's time for us to unite. But let me say this, Victor. When it comes to issues of balance, because you asked that question about balance.
Yes.
With finality, let me say, there are things that the media cannot afford to sit on the fence over. The issues of law and morality as stipulated is no center. What is legal is legal. What is illegal is illegal.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, again, we need to even have consultants in newsrooms, including lawyers. Because on an event where probably a law has broken, it is not the work of the media. You know, there's somebody who said you cannot be told. The work of the media is not about, you know, somebody tells you it is raining. Then you interview this one, is it raining? Then the other one, is it raining? Your work is to get your eyes out of the window, look out and see whether it is raining. It's as simple as that. So there are things that we cannot afford to sit in the center about. It's about clarity. Is it legal or not? Period.
Thank you. I think that's a period. That closes the show. Thank you so much. I think that's the best time to, and that the best point to end that discussion. But we can never exhaust it, because matters, media and politics will go back way years. Tulikuwa na waandishi wa habari katika Biblia. It goes back in the days. Thank you so much for your valid company. I've been talking to Jacob John Kioria, who is our political reporter here at KBC, as well as Alfred Kidaha Usagi, who is a lecturer at the Multimedia University, as well as Ken Bosire, who is a consulting and media training editor here. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your valid company, and even you as a viewer for watching the show. We'll take a break. But when we come back, do you know something about safety in your homes? About fire, how to prevent fire, and how to treat a burn? That is a show that you don't want to miss. Stick around, we'll be right back.